me just welcome everybody to Cornerstone of Milford. Let me also welcome you to our third in a series of 3 of collaborative efforts with Cornerstone, Whitcomb House, and Blair House. And I might add, it's really been a collaborative effort, everybody really pitching in and making this work. This is the finale, and it's a great crowd, and I hope we all have seats. I think we do. My name is Tony Chinapi. I'm with the Milford National Bank and Trust Company in the Wealth Management Group. And we've co-sponsored this with the other people present tonight, who I'll introduce in just a minute, as an opportunity to give you a chance to really get out there and see what assisted living is about, if it pertains to you now or maybe in time. We're very proud of the 3 communities we have. They're really a little different. I mean, they all have some of the same services, but they all have something unique to them. Certainly, Cornerstone does. So let me try to get right into the program. The title for tonight's program is Assisted Living, Real Life Scenarios Dealing with Life Changes, If Not Now, When, a conversation with no filters. What we're hoping is that we present a lot of good information to you. It still should raise questions, and we're hoping through the means of a panel discussion we can answer your questions. Nobody's going to go home with all the answers. Matter of fact, if we can answer one of your questions, I think we'll be doing really good. So if that's our topic, some of our presenters, I'm just going to give a light introduction now. At the back of the room we have the Community Relations Director, Beth Patris, right there. Everybody see Beth? Everybody wave to Beth, or Beth's waving to you. She is literally the voice and the face of Cornerstone. She's the person that can really be of help to you regarding tours or any information you might need. Next, I'd like to introduce her boss, Mr. Tad Clayland. Tad comes to us with a licensed social worker background, but as a senior partner and executive for assisted living residents, a major corporation, he's responsible for all the operations and occupancies here at Cornerstone and at the other sites that they have, I believe, throughout the state. Beth will give a little bit more definition there. Next, we're going to have what I call a geriatric care manager. In her handout, she calls herself something else.
Aging life care.
Aging life care. Okay, I'm old-fashioned. And Rebecca Weil-Wesley. Rebecca is a registered nurse and a whole bunch of other things. You'll see her alphabet soup behind her. But she's the founder of the Aging Space located in Hopedale. And in her handout, which you'll see shortly, it'll give you an excellent idea of what she does and how she does it. Next will be Paula Netter. Paula's right up front. Paula is an attorney with Heaney and Small, local attorneys firm. I'm going to read a little bit more about Paula before she speaks, from some very impressive credentials. And then you settle with me. I'll introduce myself a little bit later on professionally, but I'm with the Milford National Bank. We used to be the Investment and Trust Department. Now we're the Wealth Management Department, and within that group is the Trust Department. We're representing the financial aspect of this, because it basically is private pay, unlike some other programs that are out there. So with that, let me bring your attention. Beth, I'm going to have you speak in a minute. I'm just going to go through the folder first.
Oh.
She'll give an introduction. So I'm a former teacher, and there's a way of doing this. I don't want you to pull everything out, but if you'd stay with me, first you'll see the program of activities, and that's what I just went through basically. Again, the topics tonight that you can see that the people that I just introduced will be talking about. And then if you go into your packet, you'll see what I refer to as a comment sheet. It's not an evaluation so much as if you'd like to follow up with one of the speakers, then please fill in the information and we'll follow up with you, discuss whatever issues you'd like to discuss. And for our purposes, we'd really appreciate some of your comments so we can improve these presentations, that we can add to, take away from, and if there are any other presentations that you'd like to attend. So please, and on the way out, Jackie, the young lady at the end from our department, will pick these up. In other words, you can't leave unless you leave one, okay? Next, there are a couple of newsletters, and I'm not going to go over them at all, but there's some really good information. Some of you may have a March newsletter, some have an April newsletter, and these are letters that we send out to bank clients, either electronically or in the mail, and good monthly information, some particularly good ones this year on rollovers of 401ks. And lastly, just another commercial, if you will, our bank is sponsoring a seminar on May 18th at the bank involving paying for some of the assisted living expenses, particularly through long-term care insurance. So if you're not familiar with it, that'll be a good opportunity to get familiar with it. And then you'll notice in your folder there are 4 business cards. My business card, Rebecca's, Beth's, and Paula's. So you have kind of all the information you need to follow up. And then if I may, if we go to the left side of the folder, the first thing is this Cornerstone brochure. The back side has a lot of the services that they provide, and it's a good thumbnail sketch. But I want to point you just for a minute to the front. I want to read what it says. It gives me a little perspective on this. There's, I assume, a mother and a daughter. I finally acknowledged that Mom wasn't really living independently at home. She was just living alone. And that's, that to me is very powerful. And the last sentence is, I'm no longer the caretaker. I'm her daughter again, which again I think is very powerful. So good information there. We also have a lot of information, a brochure that we provide from the Investment and Trust Department. A lot of the things that Paula will be mentioned legally are defined in here, and a little bit more explanation. The centerfold particularly has a nice chart. Moving right along. Also, there's another sheet which is announcing our evening tonight. But I think what's important here is look at the smiles on the faces. That's, I think, what brings the meaning of what we're doing here. It's a peace of mind kind of situation. So we're here now and you can't leave. Next is a sheet about from Rebecca as a geriatric care professional or aging life care professional. These are her talking points, and she'll be going through them in some detail. I won't mention anything right now, but her logo basically is where caring meets planning, and I think that says it all. If you really care for someone, you're going to plan for them, or if you care for yourself. Lastly, there's a biography of Paula, both her firm and on her own. I'll mention some of those things, but if you want to look through it a little bit, it's very impressive. And then lastly is my little presentation, a little commercial on the front side, and what I'm going to be talking about, the financial planning process on the back side. So with that, are there any questions so far? Okay, so we're going to try to move right along. Again, I'd like to introduce Beth, and Beth will give you a little introduction into Cornerstone and some of the things that she does.
Yeah, Beth.
Thanks. Hello, everybody, and for those individuals that this is your first visit to Cornerstone, welcome. A lot of familiar faces, so welcome back, and great to see you. A few housekeeping things I'll just kind of go over briefly. I'll be at the back of the room during the presentation, so if anyone needs anything, please just flag me and we'll help you out with that. Your dinner entrees that you selected, they will be available for you following the program at the registration table that you signed in. The other, I wanted to introduce Carolyn Smith, our executive director. Carolyn and I will be in the cafe for individuals that are interested in visiting the community, seeing some of the apartments and the common areas. We would be more than happy to introduce you to our community tonight following the presentation. Just see us we'll be in the cafe playing cards with the guys. So, probably losing. So the one thing I wanted to talk about, prior to coming to Cornerstone, I've been in senior care for about 35 years. In acute care, subacute care, and then joining Cornerstone as assisted living in 2014. Over those decades, worked with a lot of individuals, worked with a lot of families, and trying to find what their situation was and trying to help them with solutions. Consistently, their stories would be different, their family makeups would be different, but their goals were the same. Their goals were to find for themselves or a loved one a safe, secure community or program, one where they can continue to be involved, and one where they could continue to be independent. 30 years ago, there weren't a lot of options to meet those goals, but today things are different. There's been change. And although change can be a struggle, and Tad's going to talk about some of that, change can be positive. And certainly the options that have been brought to Milford in the area have been positive. So we're very proud of all of the services that we have, and certainly I'm incredibly proud of this community. I joined Cornerstone after meeting with Tad and some of the other representatives from senior living residences in Cornerstone, and it truly spoke to me because of what we call, or they call, the right values, and what I have always led my life by, and what we are doing with our associates here. And those right values are our valued associates, and those are our nursing department, our resident care associates, our dietary program staff. They truly live and breathe this community. They're dedicated to the residents and helping them meet those goals. They're specifically trained and they're passionate about what they do. The innovations that have been brought into this community, we have an affiliation with Boston University in their School of Medicine. The innovations that senior living residences has supported in Cornerstone, as well as Boston University, from our specialized dietary program, brain healthy cooking program, which many of you have sampled and enjoyed, to our continued learning programs, the music programs, our diversity and within our community, the discovery in being able to work with our residents to see what is important to them. And it's really not to meet our mold, but for us to meet them, so that they can continue to be productive and involved in their lives. With quality of life, there is not one decision made within this community or for the residents here without considering how the impact on the quality of their life, and continually looking to improve that. And the last one is one that was specifically spoke to me, and that was integrity. And this company doing what they say they're going to do. And that's not seen a lot of times, unfortunately, but it is something that is ingrained in our community and what we live and breathe. So I hope tonight, the purpose of this program tonight is really about all of you. And it's really to be able to present, whether this be you're here for yourself or you're here for a loved one, is to be able to provide you with some solutions on how to talk about assisted living, when is the right time for assisted living, how to navigate this very complicated healthcare system that has developed over change, how to prepare yourself from a legal perspective to make that flow easier, and certainly from a financial perspective on how to protect those assets and how allow those assets to continue to work for you. I do hope that you will fill out the information card. We have a lot of programs here at Cornerstone. We celebrated Italy, and we had individual. How was that? How was the?
Good.
Yeah, we had a cello player and Italian wine, and we have programs like this, and we certainly want to be able to make those available to you. So please fill out the card, and we'll make sure you get on the mailing list and are aware of those programs as they come up. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Tad Clayland. I contacted Tad on Monday to let him know that this was being televised. And Tad was a little bit worried about how he would do his hair for tonight, but I think he did a pretty good job, right? Looking good.
No fuss.
So,
Thank you, Beth. So, I feel it's important before I begin to let you know why I do what I do. When I was in high school, my grandmother moved in with us. After having some difficulties in her home, my mother and father decided that it was time for us to provide that additional support and take care of her. For my entire life, she had always been the fun grandma that we'd do holidays with, but it wasn't until she lived with us that I really got to know who she was. And over time, her diseases got the best of her. And so that was kind of expected, and we saw those changes, and we kind of knew they would happen. But something I didn't expect as a teenager also became super front of mind, and that was the changes I saw in my mother. She was working a full-time job, being a full-time caregiver, taking care of our home, and she physically and emotionally started to change. So my mother refers to me as the best mistake she ever made because my siblings are so much older than me. But this was a time I had to call on them for help. They flew in from out west, and we essentially did what we refer to as an intervention with my father, and let him know that my mother couldn't do this anymore, that she needed help. So they began the arduous task of looking for long-term care placement for my grandmother. And after they had found a nursing home for her, I went and visited her on one of my return trips now when I was in college. And as I walked through the nursing home, I couldn't imagine that my grandmother was living in this place, and she didn't seem to fit the mold or the profile of the other patients that were living there. So shortly after, I think it was literally 2 months almost to the day after moving in the nursing home, my grandmother passed away. And that's when I decided that I was going to commit the rest of my life to advocating and caring for seniors and doing what I could to improve their lives on an individual and macro level. So now I'm proudly one of the partners of Senior Living Residences, where I get to directly impact the quality of life of our residents day in and day out. But not only them, the family members that are also going through this journey and helping them navigate their way to finding what's right for their family at this time of the family's lives. So I think, just so we're all understanding who the assisted living resident typically is, this is a gross generalization, so I want to just put that out there. I know that it is. The traditional assisted living resident is someone who's around aged 83, who requires assistance with 2 activities of daily living generally, like bathing, dressing, grooming, medications. So people that move in, the top 3 reasons they move into assisted living are socialization, fighting the anonymity and loneliness of being at home. In social work, they refer to this as the tunneling effect with all the losses. Losses of career, family moving away, friends, spouses, etc. The second is nutrition. Because of increased frailty, it may grow increasingly difficult to get out to the grocery store and get some of the basic needs to prepare meals day in and day out. Or there may be cognitive issues, where sequencing those steps, putting together a grocery list, being able to put together a meal may become increasingly difficult. And the last is safety. Peace of mind, knowing that someone's available 24 hours a day should you need them. And I believe the name assisted living is a little bit of a misnomer. I've worked in long-term care, I've worked in independent living and assisted living, and what assisted living really means to me, and the people we serve, I think, would tell you this as well, is we focus on the individual's abilities and provide support where it's needed to help them maintain independence. Okay? We will likely go into that a little bit more as well. But tonight, I'm here to have a candid conversation with you. I want to stimulate thought and conversation around some of the key areas or barriers that families, spouses, and people who are looking for themselves often face when making this decision. The bulk of these really focus on the person who's supporting a loved one It could be a spouse or an adult child or a family member or even a legal representative. And some of the issues they face when it comes down to, yes, we're ready to make this move or not. So, the number one thing that often holds families back from making the decision is, want to guess what that is?
Money.
It's not money, actually. No. Good guess, though. I was expecting someone to say money. Not you. Safety. Safety is a key concern. But what prevents them from making the decision?
The parent doesn't want to.
Okay, that's a piece of it. So I'm going to go with that. She said the parent doesn't want to make the move, which produces the emotion of guilt. Right? Where does the guilt come from?
You don't want to hurt them.
You don't want to hurt them? What I most commonly hear is that they made a promise to their mom or dad or spouse that they would care for them in their home until the end of their life. And they feel like they're breaking that promise. But in the case of my parents, they realized that they needed a team of people to do what my mom was trying to do by herself. And coincidentally, my parents are now on a wait list for one of my communities. So I'm going through this now with them. It's also a fear of the unknown. I think there's still a giant misconception out there about what assisted livings are. I think when I meet with the potential residents, they often describe what they imagine it's going to be as a hospital-like building with cinder block walls, polished floors, nurses' stations with wheelchairs and walkers out in front of them, not vibrant social environments that are more home-like and you have your own kitchen in your apartment. That's not the vision that they get. So it's just simply oftentimes the fear of the unknown. Along with the guilt also is the perception that a move to an assisted living environment is a step down. Or in the case where we have our Compass Memory Support Neighborhood where we treat the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, that is a step down because it's a secured environment. Well, that makes me think of Dr. Paul Rea, who wrote the book, literally, on habilitative therapy and treating the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. And he describes, if you had a child who came into the house from playing, and they're screaming in pain and pointing to their arm, the arm was bruised, swollen, and disfigured, you take your child to the emergency department, and the doctor were to walk in and say, yep, here's the x-ray, your child's arm is broken. Thank you, have a good day. I'd imagine you'd have some questions, wouldn't you? Yeah. Does it need a cast? Does it need surgery? What is the pain management going to be? What about physical therapy, right? Well, that is a great analogy for this time in our seniors' lives and the people we care about's lives. There are symptoms that we need to treat. And treatment is beyond a pill. Because we're so used to walking into a doctor's office with a symptom and we walk out with a prescription, a pill. So guilt's a big one. The other common challenge that families face that we help them through is when there's multiple siblings involved, right? Several adult children. And I think the most common scenario is this. The adult child who is caring for mom or dad in the home has reached that pivotal point where the marriage is suffering, their career is suffering, the children are not getting the time and attention that they feel the children need, and they say to their siblings, I need your help. This has just gotten too overwhelming for me. And guess what often happens? The brother calls and says, I just talked to mom last night. She sounded fine to me. I think you need to suck it up for a little while longer. We told her we wouldn't put her in one of those places. And the sisters say, you know, I visited her. She was fine. She was over to my house for Thanksgiving. We didn't notice any problems. But it's the person who's with them day in and day out that sees the struggles. They know. And if they're raising the red flag after making this commitment to care for their sibling's mom, they should listen. And so we work with the families and bringing everyone in and completing assessments to demonstrate to the family that the issues your sister has identified are very real. Your mom is at risk for the following. Here are some possible solutions and ways we can help immediately and long term. And the last, which frankly could be a sub-bullet for the first, guilt, and probably the hardest one that we have to help families with, is when they recognize all the symptoms, they decide and get consensus from all their siblings that the right next step is to go into an assisted living. Everyone's on the same page, except they say, it's up to my mother. And this is most common in instances where they've come to us because of some type of crisis. And most often it's related to some type of dementia. The neighbors brought mom back for the third time. The police brought mom back in the middle of the night because she thought she had to go to work. But they want their mother to make this decision about whether it's time to move into assisted living. She's not making safe decisions day in and day out anyway. And really what that is, and totally understandably, is a way to avoid making the decision on behalf of the person they need to make the decision for. So, there are resources to assist families through all of these issues, not only the assisted living communities that you may be looking at, but there's geriatric care managers that can come in and also do assessments. They can do in-home assessments. They can connect you with resources to come into the home to help you manage and have family meetings. There's visiting nurse associations that can come in and do in-home evaluations. Private home health agencies. So there's many, many supports to help overcome many of these hurdles that we have identified as the key issues that families often face when making this decision. So I know there's going to be a question and answer period at the end of this discussion, and I'm happy to address any concerns that I may have made you think of at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. I just want to make a comment. We have a client at the bank who fits exactly that situation. And this is what's not happening. The father is getting no socialization because he probably hasn't left the house. His nutrition is the same old nutrition he's always been getting. And not saying that that's not good. It is an Italian family. But it's probably not balanced. So there may be some shortcomings there. And I guess he's safe, but with that, he's not probably getting much movement either. So, and definitely the siblings, two of which don't talk to each other anymore. This is real life, because I've made next to no progress. I wish that Tad could actually speak with them, but the die is cast in that situation. Everybody's just dug in, and it just isn't going to change. So just some great points, and I'd really like to have you think about those.
I love a challenge.
Okay, tomorrow afternoon at 2.
I'll clear my schedule.
Our next speaker, this is the honest truth. We were putting this program together literally months ago, and we were talking about who should be on whose panel, and we want to make sure we had someone from the Veterans Administration. We wanted to have someone, a life age coordinator, etc. But this name Rebecca kept on coming up. And everybody mentioned, Rebecca would be fine to discuss this. Rebecca would be fine to discuss that. And I guess we decided at the meeting Rebecca was going to be at the program. The thing, though, that Beth was the smartest one. That night, she called Rebecca and booked her for tonight, because I know she got 2 other calls the next morning, but those people were too late. Literally all roads led to or through Rebecca. So with that introduction, let me just make another comment or so. The aging space, which I thought was that's the name of her business, which I thought was kind of pretty cool. because there's a space out there that most of the people in this room are in, and in some cases not getting all the attention they should be. So she's literally filling that space with the information that she's providing and the support that she's providing. So with no further ado, Rebecca.
Thank you. Do we need to stand close to the mic? Closer like this?
The mic
This
is
is
for the TV, so
Super.
I think we can hear.
Good evening, everybody. So my head is quite full now. I may not be able to hold it up. So when I think about the aging space, it is this, I'm thinking also not just the ground we stand on, but it's this period of time in your life. And there are times when I think about that period of time when children grow up and they're getting ready to go to college, and there's all kinds of planning that goes into that. And that's that space of time where our family is launching our youth into higher education. And there are many other spaces that go on the continuum, but if you look at kind of at the space where we're in right now, we're really looking at how to enjoy the last decade, we're hoping, or so, of life. And this is the time to think about it and be considerate about it, and not just fall into it. And sometimes we do just all of a sudden say, wow, how did I get so old and I haven't planned for this? You know, it was a surprise, and this should be no surprise that we all do get older if we're lucky. One of the things Beth mentioned is 30 years ago, or perhaps Tad mentioned, 30 years ago, there were no assisted livings. 30 years ago, people didn't live this long. That's really what it is, and truly, no assisted livings meant often people were aging in their family homes, and wives weren't out in the workplace, and we had multiple generations in the home. So people really, you had many generations. You had children, the moms and dads, you had grandparents, maybe even great-grandparents. It's not like that anymore. So we did have to put structures into place to be able to make it so that people can continue to live with some level of independence, but not in their family homes oftentimes. So there's a myth I'd like to dispel. There's a couple of things. For one thing, this talk is supposed to be let's get real, a conversation with no filters. When I'm up here and what I'm talking about as a care manager isn't necessarily to bring you on a path to assisted living. So can I still talk? Because my goal is really, as a geriatric care manager or an aging life care professional or manager, is to be able to help individuals and families to be able to decide what's the best solution for them. And the other myth I would dispel is that everybody uses the term aging in place. That's the goal, is to age in place. And we all believe aging in place means that you're going to stay in the home that you raised your children in, and you'll stay there until they take you out foot first. And it's not realistic that most of us can do that. And I think if our goal is to age in place, and you all may not even say that word, but if you listen to the ads on TV, everybody talks about aging in place and to be independent. Most of us aren't independent. Each of us have something that supports us to be a little bit better, and sometimes as we get a bit older, we have more supports that are in place. So we aren't necessarily going to be independent until the end. We're probably not going to be able to age in place if we think that's our family home that has 2 stories and no bathroom on the ground floor. It's just not going to be feasible for us. So those are things that I look at when I get involved with a family. I'm an RN. I've been a nurse for decades, is another word we heard today. 40 years, and part of my background working as a registered nurse was to work with families in their homes. I worked through the traditional VNA kind of system, and I was drawn to being a care manager because when you have a VNA nurse come to your house, they come in when you're coming home from the hospital, you have that person for maybe 4 or 6 weeks, and then they leave. And then maybe if you go to the hospital again at some point, that nurse or another nurse may come back, and you have a short amount of care, and it's all determined by Medicare, how long Medicare says you can have a nurse for. So when I chose to work in the field of care management, I really wanted to work with families and adults, aging adults,
for the rest of their lives, maybe, if we're lucky. We get to have a long relationship where I get to know everything about the family. I often get involved with families when aging becomes difficult. And often that's as we get later into the 80s. Although I would tell you that I have clients who are in their late 60s, and because of illness, aging has become more difficult for them. But several of my clients are in their mid-90s, and aging was okay, and then it wasn't. And so often families will call someone like me because they live in California and their mom lives in Milford. And they can tell something's happening, or truly when they visited, mom's lost weight, the holidays, she seems more confused than she was before. Don't know where that's coming from. And so they're concerned, and a lot of families will try to solve that problem across the coast. And they'll do internet research, or they'll try to come every other week, and they'll grocery shop and clean the house and fill the pill boxes. I've known daughters who filled pill boxes, box them, send them off by FedEx so that their mom can get them. You know, really difficult kinds of things to be able to hold a care plan together for their parent. But mom's not getting to the doctor, or she's really not able to buy fresh food. She's not always interested in having a friend come into the house, or if you hire somebody to come in and help her, she says, I'm fine, and closes the door. So sometimes families, in order to be able to help their loved one, their aging elder, often involve somebody like me to start to build a relationship with the elder and with the family, and to be able to start to see what are the problems, what's working, and then what can we shore up to make better. And some of the decisions might be where they live. Some of them might be getting back to the doctor and trying to figure out what's going on with medications and what's going on with diet. And if mom is confused, is it necessarily that she has Alzheimer's disease, or is something else going on? So we just start to track down all those problems and try to eliminate problems. How's mom's hearing? How is her vision? How's her walking? All the things that deteriorate in your life or deteriorate the quality of your life, we try to improve. So we ask lots of questions, pick up lots of rocks. We talk about money. We talk about attorneys. Before I even take a client on, I'll say, who's your attorney? How long ago did you write your will? You need to have an elder law attorney. So that's what Paula will talk about. Because as we get older, the wills we wrote 20 years ago no longer work for us. So I help you kind of get your house in order, and I don't do the legal work. I just send you to the right people. If your finances aren't in order, I help you find someone who can help you with your finances. My job is to know as much as I can about all the things in your community and be able to figure out what's perfect for that person. And for some people, it's just to have a companion come in once a week for a couple of hours in the afternoon, and that makes a difference. Or to take them out to go grocery shopping and plan some meals, or to put some Meals and Wheels on place. That's how simple it could be. Or it could be as dramatic as selling a house, selling your car that you shouldn't be driving because, whatever reason that is, and being able to help you find a new community that might look a lot like this to be able to move into. And not every community is right for everybody, and not everybody needs to be in assisted living. But I would agree with what you were commenting on, that nutrition and socialization. I can give an example of a client, a husband and wife of mine, who have all their home care services at home. They have the perfect situation. People come in, they take care of them for hours at a time. But when I met these people who had the perfectly set up house, perfect nutrition, great medical care, great care from their caregivers, what we realized was what they were going without, they didn't have any socialization. They weren't seeing their peers. They were just alone every day with people who were there to take care of them. And while they were lovely people and that was a nice situation, those people made a choice to move to assisted living. And so you can go to assisted living because you had nothing at home or you had everything, but you can't replace socialization at home. And when you live at home, you tend to be pretty isolated. That's just kind of the reality of America these days, is that unless you're living in an apartment building where you can open your door and go out and see people, you tend to be on your own for long periods of time. If you live with your family who are out working, they're out all day, they don't come home till the end of the day. So socialization is a driver that might bring you into an assisted living setting. What other kinds of things would be valuable for you to think about? I have a friend here who's a financial planner, and one of the things we often think about is he talks about being aging as a risk factor. And I think of aging as a real bonus, as a real benefit. So it's an interesting problem you have, the blessing of growing old, but if you don't have enough money, it becomes a burden. So one of the things I work with people on, and one of the topics I was going to address a bit is how to figure out how to make your money last as long as possible. So one of my other jobs for you is to know what life costs for you right now, how much money's in the bank, how protected is your money that your attorneys helped you with, and are you able to finance your plan to live monthly? Can you meet your needs? And we kind of need to have a good idea of how long are you going to live for, so that we can make sure that you spend the least amount of money to be able to have the longest. And that's not my job. My job isn't to help you make money. My job is to be able to find you the least expensive options when you start, and to be able to postpone big expenses as long as possible. So some of the ways I do that is I make sure we figure out what are all the free services you're eligible for. What are your local area agencies able to do for you? Can your senior center be more involved with your care? Those are all free services. So we always look to be able to put things into place that cost you $0. And then we start to look at increasing those costs the more your needs are. But again, the goal for me is to be able to save you money so that you can have better quality of care when you need that quality of care. I don't think I can say anything more than that. Brian?
Say sometimes decisions are difficult to make, people don't want to make them, and how you have to be brave on occasions and say the things that people don't necessarily want to hear but are in their best interest.
Well, that's sometimes one of the benefits of a care manager, is that we'll be the bad guy in a way. So I may hear conversations in family. Children may feel they really want to have a change and that they are burned out, as we talked about earlier, that caregiver who can't do it any longer, and the elder who's adamant that they're not going to move. Sometimes I'll be the one who delivers the bad news. It might be you can no longer drive, and that's a quick reason why you often have to move. You can't live at home alone anymore. This isn't going to work. And the things that you want to put into place aren't going to be sufficient to keep you safe. It's always a balancing act, though, and this is, again, something that gets involved when we have to talk to a physician or to an attorney as to whether or not a person is competent to make their own decisions. Some people are fully competent and can make bad choices, and we have to learn to live with that. And part of my job is to try to shore up that person, even if they're making a choice that doesn't look safe to me. But it is difficult that there are times we have to tell the truth in a way, and we have to be able to point out how the system is failing. And again, that person who's competent is able to make that choice, and we just have to be there, and unfortunately, we have to wait until they may fall. Often a care manager is involved when maybe the family has allowed for that failure to happen, and all of a sudden they're in a crisis. And a crisis is never a good place to be at, because it gives you fewer options to be able to solve the problems that occur during that crisis. So when caring meets planning really truly means is plan ahead, put your plan on the shelf, and then live your life. And for your children, put a plan in place for yourself so that your children don't have to solve this for you. Be part of this planning process. Don't ignore it. It most likely will not go away by ignoring it. You'll have to solve this problem at some point. And the more options you have will occur when you can plan earlier, when you haven't just broken your hip. I think that's it. You do have my little crib sheet. That's really, how do I know I need a care manager? Didn't need to go through that. I think you can read that, and we can do questions.
what a great expression, where caring meets planning, and she really lives that. Next on the agenda is Paula Netter. Paula's an attorney with Heaney and Small, a very popular law firm in Milford, and I see they have an office in Walpole also. A couple of things about Paula. In her practice, she's very much involved in elder care, estate planning issues, guardianships, probate, real estate, but she's also very involved in veterans benefits. May I ask, are there any veterans here or spouses of veterans? Okay, so that's a good point there. We can maybe talk about that during the panel discussion. But Paula is an accredited attorney with the Department of Veteran Affairs, so that's something good to know. In addition to her practice in Massachusetts, Paula was also admitted to the Federal Bar and U.S. Supreme Court Bar, quite a distinction. She's also a member of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. That's a pretty impressive group, and as a matter of fact, in 2011, she was selected as Member of the Year. Again, without further ado, let's go, Paula. Take your time.
Okay, thank you, Tony. And thank you, Beth, for inviting me and allowing me to participate in this. This is quite a showing, and thank you for coming and giving up your time, your valuable evening time to hear all of this. I hope you will find this very informative. When Tad was speaking about his inspiration, got me to think about my own mother, and I could spend the rest of the night talking about my own mother, but I will say it's interesting how that happens. And when I was practicing law before my mother became ill, I wasn't doing this kind of law. I was actually a prosecutor, and I was having fun putting bad guys in jail, and it had nothing to do with elder law. But it did have to do with protecting the rights of our community members and protecting victims and making people be paying for any harm that they may have caused. And when my mother started to become ill, I could see how the medical community could run roughshod over her and put her in a position where she could not make informed decisions about her own health care. So I found an opportunity through my mother's life and situation to advocate for her as her daughter, not as an attorney. And in that process, which was a joyous process, I have to tell you, taking care of someone that you love is one of the most beautiful things you can do for that person and for yourself. Because I can tell you, she gave me more than I gave her. And I know from her generation, and it may be a few of you that fit in that category, you feel that sometimes when you fall ill and you need your family to help you, that you don't want to go to them. You don't want to make your problems their problems. But I can speak from personal experience that that's not how it's viewed. At least in my case, and I'm sure I'm not alone, that when we care for our loved ones, we've been given a gift that we need to nurture and take care of. And that's was a beautiful thing for me, and I think I hope you can see that sometimes too. I like when I meet my clients from my mother's era, and where they tell me that they don't want to be a burden on their children. I try to persuade them otherwise, and try to tell them that that's maybe not going to be the case. And I enjoyed every minute of it, and I would give my right arm to have more time with her, and even in that capacity, because it meant a lot to me. Well, I will just move on now to why I'm here, and also tell you that it's very good that I've been given 15 minutes, because otherwise I think we would be here a lot longer. So I've made this very brief, and I'm just going to tap on a few things to help you be aware, and we can certainly use the discussion afterwards to explore those items a little bit more, or certainly afterwards I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. I want to start out, I have to focus on the legal aspects, and there's so many, but I limited this to estate planning, because there are other aspects that we could certainly talk about. But I think it'd be fair to say that every major relationship that we enter into has some kind of legal ramification, whether it's a marital situation, a job-related, or anything along those lines. They're often subject to laws or contracts that govern how we begin and end that relationship and what happens in between. So when we talk about relationships between assisted living communities and senior adults who call them home, I'd say that that relationship is no exception. And although those living relationships or arrangements are likely to be positive and beneficial and hopefully long-lasting, there are some legal considerations I want you to be aware of that deal with estate planning that you yourself or your family who's maybe helping you should be aware of prior to becoming a resident of a assisted living community. One of the most important things that I try to convey to my clients, and I want you to be aware of, when you become a resident of a facility, whether it's an assisted living facility or even a nursing home, you have the right to be in control of your life when it concerns your financial and medical affairs. That doesn't go away. In fact, under Massachusetts law and most states, a resident is presumed to be able to make his own decisions. That's never taken away from you just because you've entered a certain community. But the problem arises not by entering that community and becoming part of it. The problem arises when you start to experience, this happens to you, diminished capacity. You become impaired somehow, and it interferes with your ability to make decisions about your medical situation or about your finances. So the question comes up, who gets to make those decisions for you if that is happening to you? Now, certainly I can tell you who cannot make those decisions for you. The assisted living facility or the nursing home do not have the right to impose their judgment of what your medical situation should be or what your financial decisions should be. Instead, what has to happen is that somebody has to be appointed to manage those affairs on behalf of you. And that can happen one of two ways. One way is either the court will appoint somebody through a process called guardianship or conservatorship, or you appoint someone by executing what's called a power of attorney or healthcare proxy. Now, when the court's involved, the court will determine who will be appointed and what that person will do for you. The court will appoint either a guardian or a conservator, or they may appoint both. A guardian will handle all those life affairs that you have, such as where you live, the support you need, decisions about your health care. But a conservator manages other things, like your estate and your financial affairs. And the conservator will pay your bills and handle your accounts and deal with any real estate you may have. So that's one way of doing it, and I would tell you, not the preferred way. So how do you avoid court involvement, and how do you plan as you age? If you don't have to be elderly or senior to worry about this at any age, or how do you help your parents plan? The way you do it is by planning ahead. That's the best and only way. And it's by being proactive in making those decisions. Now, elder law is a term that's used by the legal profession to focus on these special issues and legal rights that senior citizens and disabled people can have during the course of their lives. And attorneys who work in this field have to, it's a specialty type of area where they have to master a body of law that changes constantly. And you'll hear things on the news that are kind of scary, and that's because people are talking about changing the law, and eventually it's going to change. And there's legislation and there's regulations that deal with all these aspects of finances and healthcare and housing. But I would say at the most basic level, elder law involves the design and creation of basic estate planning documents. I mean, that's the foundation, and that's the basis of elder law, and it's probably what most elder laws focus on, in addition to a few other things. So I would say, I think it'd be fair to say that regardless of your age, every adult should have a power of attorney and a healthcare proxy. The power of attorney to assist you with financial decisions and a healthcare proxy to assist you with your medical decisions. And a properly drafted and executed power of attorney would do just that. It would designate someone that you choose to manage your financial affairs. And a properly drafted and executed healthcare proxy would be appointing somebody you choose to help make your medical decisions. I would say that although these documents are critical at any age, they're a necessity for seniors and disabled people. You know, I've never had a client come in and tell me that he hopes to retire to a nursing home and he hopes that he loses his ability to make reasoned and informed decisions. That doesn't happen. Nobody wants that to happen to them. We all want to believe that we'll live out our lives in our own home and in control. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what I want. And it's a reasonable expectation. But the reality is that assisted living in nursing homes in diminished capacity are going to be happening to many of us. And unless we have a crystal ball, I don't think any of us can predict that. So it's critical to execute these documents while you have the capacity to do so. And most importantly, while you are in the driver's seat. These are like insurance policies. You do them ahead of time in case something happens, and it's there for you when you need it. Likewise, to adjunct to that, I would say it's critical to execute a proper will, and sometimes when it's applicable, a trust. They're not always applicable, but sometimes they are. That's because those documents will govern the distribution of your assets, and you appoint somebody to be in charge of your estate after you are gone. One of the few times you get to rule from the grave, which you can do that with trusts very handily. So you can see that estate planning is not just about death and taxes or just for the wealthy, which some people seem to have that misunderstanding. It includes planning for disability. We're living longer, and the prospect of us outliving our physical and mental capacity to make informed decisions about our health and finances are very real. We also have to think about the unexpected, God forbid, an accident or an injury that causes disability. Now, some people think that, well, they're married, and your spouse is going to make those decisions if necessary. So what do I need these documents for? Or some people have told me, you know, I'm a parent of a disabled child. Because I'm the parent, I can make the decisions for my child, my adult child, but that's not true. And for those of you who might remember, there's some very famous cases that bring home that point. I don't know if you all remember Terry Schiavo, Karen Quinlan, Nancy Cruzan. These are very nationally known cases that dealt with some, in the case of Terry Schiavo, who's probably the most popular of the three cases, very young woman who all of a sudden went into a coma, and her husband wanted to terminate her life support and her parents didn't. And that was a huge court battle that ended up being long and drawn out, and the parents and the husband having to deal with the emotional aspects and the medical aspects of their spouse and daughter, now had to duke it out in court as to who had the authority. Had Terry executed a healthcare proxy, that would not have been necessary, and her wishes would have been honored, whatever they were, whatever they happened to be. So those cases taught us that a spouse or a parent do not have the automatic authority to make decisions just because of their position as spouse or parent. And in some cases, under certain law, a spouse doesn't automatically inherit property when you die. So all the more reason to have a will or a trust that says what's going to happen to your assets. So let me sum up and wrap up for you. The essential documents, I would say, for a basic estate plan are a power of attorney, a healthcare proxy, a will, and another document that I didn't talk about, but it's a very easy document called a HIPAA release that basically says you're giving permission to release medical information to the people that you specify. Those four documents, I say, are the basic components of a basic estate plan. There are some things that you can consider beyond a basic estate plan that include things like deeds with reserved life estates, trusts, which come in 100 different flavors, but there are certain kinds that are appropriate for your circumstance, and it isn't a one-size-fits-all. So depending upon people's facts, certain trusts might be appropriate. And lastly, if disability becomes a reality for you, you may require certain benefits from the government. So I would say another component of estate planning is assisting disabled people to plan for their long-term needs, or to assist parents or loved ones who have disabled family members on how to effectively provide for their loved ones without jeopardizing the valuable government benefits that a disabled person may be receiving. So with that, I want to let you know that I have a handout here. It's this orange document there that deals with a little more than what I talked about here. Basically, there are a lot of myths out there when it comes to government benefits and what happens to your assets if you have to go into a nursing home or if you're receiving benefits. And so what I did is I composed, I think, about 7 myths that really aren't true. So you're welcome to take that handout, and I hope you find it helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay, before we have our panel discussion, and I think hopefully you have some other questions coming up, let me speak on the financial aspect of all of this. Again, my name is Tony Chinapi. I'm a former certified financial planner with Ameriprise Financial. I was a certified financial planner for about 30 plus years, and in that time I got to know the financial planning process. And when I came to the Milford National Bank, I was happy to find that they believed in the financial planning process as much as I did. So basically, I want to reiterate what that is. Excuse me, before I do that, I got to do the commercial, or else I don't get paid this week. On the sheet that I handed out, there's an information sheet about the Milford National Bank and Trust Company. Just so you know, this is a community bank. We've been here for 100 plus years. Our 3 core businesses are retail banking, lending, and our wealth management group. The banking is pretty standard, but in terms of the wealth management group, we recently changed our name from the investment and trust group to the wealth management group. It seemed to be a more appropriate name, but of course the first question you have is, I don't know if I have enough wealth to talk to these people. And that's really not the issue. Wealth is basically what you have and what you want to protect and what you want to add to. The management is the other side of our business. And I think we spend as much time on the management of people's assets and the management of their financial situation as we do on the wealth side. So please don't let that discourage you. We feel it more aptly describes us. The last bullet point is personal trust services. We serve as both a co-trustee and a sole trustee for people in need of that type of service. We deal with families with disabilities. We deal in nursing home situations. We deal in legacy situations where people want to pass money on for generations. So the trust service really makes us unique in the area that we can provide all the retail banking and lending and the trust service and the investment services. So please give us some consideration in that regard. We have 3 locations. Our main office is kind of around the corner on East Main Street. We have a South Main Street branch and a Mendon branch. The message is from our Chief Executive Officer and President, Kristen Cavallo. She couldn't be here this evening, but it's another welcoming and a description of our bank. What is the financial planning process? We talk in terms of goals and roles. Okay, our goal tonight is to help assist you in wherever you are in the assisted living process. You're just realizing that it may be a possibility. So how can we help you from a financial point of view? We also deal obviously in a variety of goals. If it wasn't assisted living, we'd be talking about retirement or education or protection planning. Whatever you want to do, we're there to work with you. Our role is the achievement of your goals, but mostly people don't define their goals. I want to retire. Well, when do you want to retire? On how much money do you want to retire on? and you do projections of how long your money will last, it was kind of implied a few minutes ago. There's one question that's in everybody's mind here. No, almost no one excluded. Will I outlive my money? Or will my money outlive me? That's, like the eternal question. And it ain't just going to happen. It's going to happen by some conscientious, thorough planning, and as a result, you'll be able to live out your life in the best conditions possible. Just for example, we talk about retirement planning. When do you want to retire? How many years is there between now and then? And then some projections in terms of life expectancy, be it family history or just the basic numbers. It was also mentioned, we're prepared definitely to deal with the cost of aging and the financial realities that come with it. We all know we're living longer, but we all know it's getting more expensive because the reason we're living longer is because of the medical developments. And those developments don't come for nothing. And as a result, we've got to even work harder from a financial point of view to keep up with that cost of living. We are a community bank, again, both in the trust area. What our goal is in Milford and in the Blackstone Valley area is to become your financial resources, where we can provide relevant information and viable solutions to your problems. We're not talking about products, we're talking about solutions. We definitely believe that knowledge is power, and that's what we're trying to extend tonight. And we also believe that your money, how you use your money now will determine how your future will be down the road. Your money, your future. So our method. Here's what financial planning is to me and the people in our department. We thoroughly define the goal, as I said. And then we look at each of the accepted areas of financial planning. We look at your financial position, your income, your expenses, your debt, your cash reserves, your equity, whatever you own basically, and how it works in your setting. We thoroughly examine that. We look at your financial we look at your protection planning. We look to see your life insurance, disability, property and casualty, if you have long-term care, or how we should talk about it. So those insurances can be very confusing. You can also be spending a lot more than you should be. So that examination with your insurance agent, with us, whomever, the bottom line is we get some answers for you, and we provide some peace of mind that you're properly protected for a reasonable dollar. We look into tax planning with your accountant, with your CPA. We don't recommend tax recommendations, but what we do, we work very closely with you to see that you're getting all of the deductions and the exemptions, that your investment dollars are looking to go capital gains as opposed to ordinary income. All the technical stuff that you don't want to understand because you dump it off to your accountant right around this time of the year, we're working with them and trying to improve the situation next year. We look into investment planning and retirement planning. The way I look at it, you have investments that are called non-qualified investments. Investments that aren't in IRAs or 401ks or 457s. Just regular investments you have at the bank. You might own some mutual funds, some exchange-traded funds, some annuities. They're treated a certain way tax-wise. Then you have your retirement assets, your 401ks, your IRAs, your Roth IRAs, those type of investments that you gained a tax benefit, but you've got to pay the taxes when you withdraw those dollars. I'm going to venture to say most of the people here are doing RMDs, required minimum distributions from your qualified plans. So we look at each because they're really treated differently, how you maneuver them to get the best return for your dollar within your risk profile. Obviously, estate planning, working with Paula and some of the other attorneys in the area, everything that she says, we've heard it 1,000 times. And you know what people say? I'm going to do it next week. I'm going to do it next month. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. And then something happens, and it's there. The draft, it looks like a great draft, but it's not signed. So those things, and including different maneuvering with trusts, become very appropriate on the estate planning side. The seventh area of financial planning are other issues and concerns. There's nobody in this room that doesn't have an issue or concern somewhere in the family. be it a divorce, be it children that have divorces, be it an inheritance, an illness, just some financial situation that sometimes gets in the way before you can do the other planning. So we try to have a relationship where we're not just talking about the numbers, we're talking about the emotions as well. Okay, what do? We consult with existing family advisors, as I said. If there are no family advisors, we bring in people. We bring in, be it attorneys or in this case, geriatric care personnel. We do whatever has to be done. And we've got a couple of cases where we've done exactly that. Someone mentioned crisis planning. Not the best way to do planning. We've had a couple of situations recently that there's no family around, and I mean no family around. We as the bank have become the trustee of the person's estate. We're selling the property, we're selling the car, we're paying her bills that haven't been paid for a year. We just paid a real estate tax today from last year. So all those things need to be done. Ideally, if there's a family member around, then it's a little bit easier. But those are the things that we do as a department. We might even bring in a bill payer. We brought in real estate people to help in the sale of property. I guess, in conclusion, the point is we're trying to do the process of financial planning. We're not talking about products per se. Products will come. You have to implement the plan at some point in time, and that might be a mutual fund, a stock, a bond, an annuity, a real estate investment trust, or whatever. But that's only the means to get us to where we want to go. So with that, I'm going to ask you, as we're talking, as we're going into the panel discussion, to, again, fill out the comment sheet, and that'll help us for the next time we go through this. So now we're at the panel discussion phase. And I'm hoping you've got some questions ready to go. So let me just start by doing this. Ted, anything else that you want to add from your presentation, or Rebecca, Paula? Okay, because I know in Paula's case, some people last time had questions on trusts, be they revocable, irrevocable, so that's something we can follow up on with Paula. Okay, some questions, please. Help me out. I got a question, just that's over here, though. The question is, I mentioned VA benefits before, and there were quite a few veterans. Paula is associated with veterans benefits. Have any of you looked into your you have to show hands or anything, but it's a process. The aid and attendance form, if you're not familiar with it, could be a nightmare to fill out. Again, people on this panel could help you out with that. So if you're a veteran, you've got some great benefits to take advantage of. You gave your country your service, now it's time for them to pay back, basically. But you got to go through the process. You got to go through the process. Another question. No questions? No food?
Question, Tony?
Question, yes, please.
I think I have a question for Rebecca. Rebecca, how often do you see neurologists get involved in medical care when people are starting to decide what level of help, especially in my case, my parents might need at some point?
Rebecca, could you repeat the question as best you can?
Sure. How often does a neurologist get involved with providing assistance in the medical sphere for people as they're aging? And a neurologist is someone who's able to assess the ability of the brain to function the way it should be functioning, and often they're key in being able to understand if there is a decline in memory or in cognition. They're able to help with tools that will help to rule out whatever the problem is, or to fine point whatever it is. Usually, I'm often involved with families, and memory, confusion, disorientation are factoring in, and that's usually something I really advocate for. We don't just decide that someone has dementia and put a label on them and then try to treat them. I really like to go to a neurologist, or to do something called having a neuropsych exam done, which is often done either by a psychologist or a neurologist, to be able to understand what's going on, what are the things we can fix, and now we know what we have, and now we know how to help the person plan. Answer?
Yes, thank you.
Good, thank you. Another thing, oh yes, Please.
What's the purpose of the video?
What is the purpose of?
Taking a video of tonight's program?
Okay, the reason is, and actually, I'm glad that you asked that, because I saw myself on TV the other day, and I know what you're going through now. Simply that, for the people that can't attend in the Milford area or in Milford, they're able to watch this on cable TV, right from beginning to end. And we're getting your picture on there right now, I think, so you got yourself on TV. And I've actually received some favorable comments, not about my presentation or looks or anything, but the content, the topic that was discussed got some people thinking. So just a wider audience that we can have. Yes, please.
Can I piggyback on Rebecca's
Sure.
response? In my experience, we often, when we meet with a family member, they describe the symptoms of memory loss, disorientation, confusion, and they'll say to me, it's not dementia, it's Alzheimer's. And who did you speak to about this? I went to my primary care physician. Well, what did they do? They said, well, take her home and keep her comfortable. So I commend you for seeking out a neurologist, and I highly recommend that everyone who has any concerns about cognition get a full neuro workup at an Alzheimer's disease center.
Amen.
Ted, I'm reading on the board here, Compass Memory Support. Could you explain a little bit more about Compass Memory Support? Because that's one of the things I think that you introduced.
It is. So we set out to kind of break the mold on what special care programs were, and we've committed ourselves to treating the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease and other memory-related disorders non-pharmacologically. In this day and age, with modern medicine, it still happens all too often that when someone moves in and exhibits behaviors through agitation, wayfinding, exit seeking, combativeness during care, that the medical staff, the nursing staff, whether a nursing home, assisted living, etc., hospital, resort to medicating the person so that all their patients are the same. And what we specialize in is treating the symptoms non-pharmacologically and with an emphasis on who the person is. And we have several cases where people come in with several medications, and we work with their physician, nurse practitioner to reduce the medication so we get to see what their baseline is. We get to see who they are, and we treat the symptoms through environment, keeping structure, sense of purpose throughout the day, training the associates how to communicate with individuals and redirect individuals who may become anxious in the evening or any time throughout the day, and all with the emphasis on maximizing their potential quality of life and celebrating who they are now at this point in their life.
Great, great. If I may ask, is anybody here for a family member or friend from another town or even state? Okay, so comes the question, would any of you volunteer a little comment on that? Because here you are in Milford, here they are in somewhere, here they are somewhere, and they're not listening to this, and they may not be able to comprehend it either. So what is your path? Any spokesperson of the three? The guy's going to get it.
The path involves a very long airplane ride to Texas for what I predict will be a very painful and non-productive conversation with two 87-year-old parents.
Tough one.
My mother has so far refused to considering any of these questions, never mind doing anything about them. I don't see her getting around to it anytime soon. She's extremely facile at diverting away from any conversation. But they definitely need something to change.
Okay, so a very difficult situation, thousands of miles away. They're sitting here in Milford learning all this stuff, and it's not helping them because the parent is firm, doesn't really want to recognize it, I guess. Can somebody help me?
So what I would offer also is that there are care managers all over the country. So sometimes a care manager could, we could provide names for you, tell you how to find someone in the area to be able to perhaps build a relationship that might allow them to be present for those family meetings. Sometimes that's helpful to build some trust and to be able to develop a relationship that's separate from family but includes you all in a bigger picture. Sometimes that's a way to help, and they can help you with what are some small steps you can take to perhaps improve the situation a little bit, and to really have a good assessment. And that's really what's helpful for you, is to know how urgent is this, and what to look at to make you feel like this is more urgent or less urgent than maybe you thought, and you have time. So that's an option, by the way.
Yeah, maybe even Skyping in and having that conversation
ways.
with the care manager. I raised the question because it came up at other sessions, in the sense that someone's living in, it could be a town just down the road, or in another, actually this was a family from Whitensville who had a father, I think, in Maryland. And they've been going back and forth, and it hasn't been working, so it's obviously easier for him to come here. So they're exploring the different communities. So that situation, I think, is going to be happening more and more, because it's just practical that the senior comes to where the children are, and we work out the situation there. So we're here to do that. Paul is here to do that, to make that transition, and definitely Rebecca's here, and of course Beth's here. So you've got a team assembled without even organizing it, basically. So just, if you know someone else in that situation, please pass the word. Just curious, because we're getting so much responses here. Are you familiar with the SHINE program, individually or collectively? The SHINE program is a state-run, and maybe you folks can federal run, and within the state there are locations in almost. Well, could you tell us about it?
Well, they're staffed by volunteers at your local councils on aging or senior centers, and they're volunteers who often you meet with. Usually at that period of time in November when you get to change your Part D plan, they'll sit down with you and they will help you go through all your medications and all of your insurance options, and help you find the best insurance plan for the medications that you're on. They also have a great font of information about all the other programs that are available in the state to be able to give you options if you're looking for some answers. They may define their problems that you hadn't thought of. They can help you to look at that. No charge for that service.
And each community has their
Every
own, basically.
community has that, yes.
I didn't pass this, I'll write it down, but this is the Milford telephone number for the local SHINE programs. If you want to jot down the number, that would help. Any other comments, Paula, things that we might have omitted?
No, pretty good.
Pretty good?
Yeah.
I think I just want to thank you all for attending. Obviously, drive safely. Appreciate the comment cards. If you want to tell other people about the people that were on the panel, we would appreciate that, so we can reach out to more. So thank you very much.